A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences.
He has been the most challenging inmate I've had to date. But yeah, it's been going back and forth. One day he's just manic and excited, and he could be screaming on the phone. The next he's docile. And he's actually really chill, and he's easygoing. It's just a wave with him of back and forth. Leonard Lake was Charles Ng's crime partner. So he was 38. He was about 15 years older than Ng when they met. So they met in the Marine Corps and a survivalist magazine. And Ng actually went to live with Lake and his wife at the time. That's when they started building a bunker, and they had a cabin out in the mountains. These are the Sierra Nevada mountains. And they put their plan, kind of like Whittaker and Norris, of having sex slaves.
I wrote an angry email message to you because I saw you. I was in the first booth in the visiting room where there's a big window looking out to the walkway to the visiting up to the East Block. I saw you coming down, and I know you visited somebody because the officer told me, and so I was so angry.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman. Hi, everyone. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, even if it's one word.
And please subscribe to our website, www.partnersintruecrime. Follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram to check out our weekly promos. We're also now on YouTube at Partners in True Crime. If you subscribe to our website, you'll be getting weekly emails from us and all kinds of promotions and things that we don't advertise on the podcast. Laura Bran has been going to San Quentin's death row for over a decade. She's been interviewing some of the world's most notorious killers to extract information that can help families locate victims. Laura has also been assisting cold case units on multiple unsolved murders associated with inmates on death row, such as David Carpenter, Charles Ng, William Suff, James Marlowe, and more.
San Quentin is in the process of dismantling death row, and Laura has been racing against the clock to conduct interviews with these offenders before they are moved to general population.
When the serial killers are moved to general population, there's a chance that they could be killed by other inmates, taking all of their information with them. The chances of finding the missing victims after these serial killers die is slim.
Charles Ng has been convicted of 11 murders, but he is suspected of having over 50 victims who have never been found.
Ng is the only serial killer who has rattled Laura, making her question if she can continue to interview him.
A few weeks ago, Charles Ng exploded on a phone call with Laura, and we will play that call during this episode.
But first, we're going to speak to Laura, who is currently at San Quentin, preparing for her final interviews. We have so many questions. How is she dealing with the pressure? What is Charles Ng's psychopathy? Why is this serial killer so different than the others? And most importantly, why is she willing to risk her life to interview these killers? Laura also wants to hear from you. So please send in your questions to Cindy and Rob at partnersintruecrime.com. We will be doing a live Q&A with her this weekend, and she loves to hear from you, as do we.
We're back here with Laura Bran, and Laura is finishing up her work up in San Quentin because they're getting ready to close that thing for good now. And so, Laura, tell us what's been going on since the last few weeks that when we were up there with you.
So now 3 buses have gone out this week, back to back. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, buses have gone out. And they've cleared a lot out. Some of the ones that I have interviewed that have gone out is William Suff. Another one is Michael Gargiulo. He's out. And it's looking like next week, Charles Ng might be going out as the next one. They're still doing the rounds of committee. So they're trying to place them at the prisons they want to go to. They want to place them by their family. But now they're just placing them where there's an open bed. So a lot of guys who thought they were going to Vacaville, I think it was 12 of them, are now being told they have to actually go to Pelican Bay. Yeah, so not a lot of people are happy. Wes, who Rob's been working with for 25 years, he was supposed to go actually right next to Rob, and they're telling him now he might be sent up to Pelican Bay as well.
Wow. And for people who don't know what Pelican Bay is like, that's the worst of the worst.
It is. It is. And it's in the middle of nowhere, too.
Well, let's just talk about that for a second. Why is this so important? Because you're doing all this work, interviewing these killers, trying to extract information to find locations of missing victims. Rob is also doing similar work. So having them being dispersed into these other more dangerous prisons or around the country, why is that important?
Well, it makes it a lot harder, especially for myself to do the work that I'm doing, because now they're going to be placed, all around the state. And California is such a massive state. So I don't have them all in one spot anymore, to go in and do rounds of interviews with, over 10 different offenders at once. So now it's going to be traveling, it could be all over the state, up from Pelican Bay down to San Diego at Donovan, just to do interviews and extractions with these guys.
What is another challenge of this? Could they potentially be killed in these other prisons?
Yes. I mean, a lot of them, especially the serial killers, their crimes are against, women, and a lot have children or underage girls, in their cases. Look at Lawrence Bittaker, look at Charles Ng with the babies, William Suff, he killed his own son who was a baby. In the prison population, there's kind of like their own code. And if you harm, a child especially, you have a target on your back automatically.
Yeah, well, not only that, the fact that these guys are marquee killer names, and that it would give them, anybody who took them out, it would give them a certain amount of bigger cred, for lack of a better term, inside the prison.
I mean, you're looking at these offenders who could be serving a life sentence. So they know they're not getting out, and they might not be infamous, and they see an infamous serial killer come by and they take him out. Now it's like they get that infamy on them, is how they kind of look at it. So they kind of call it, a trophy or a mantelpiece is what they call it in prison.
And how does that affect your work?
Well, I mean, with the ones that need extractions, such as Charles Ng, who has, I think it's 29 extractions needed, and a lot of other ones like David Carpenter, if they get taken out, that's it. The bodies are never found. These missing persons are never identified. That's all gone once they get killed.
And just for the listeners, just explain what extractions, what are you talking about when you mean extractions?
So an extraction is like an unknown piece of information that we need. This could be either for law enforcement, like the cold case unit that I'm working with, it could be a cold case that was never solved, or they've never been charged with, but they actually did commit it. That could be an extraction. A missing person's, name. Charles Ng has 21 females they found photographs of that they never found the names for. They have no idea who these 21 females are. That's an extraction, finding out their names. And then their bodies. Where are these girls? We know they're by the cabin where him and Lake were doing their crimes, but we have no idea where their bodies are. They've never been found. And we don't even have their names to even identify them.
Wow. So let's talk about Charles Ng right now, because when we were up there with you, you were trying to get a face-to-face with him inside the cage, and there was a lot going on because you were getting some inside information that he was maybe harboring some weapons inside his cell, and you were getting warnings from the other offenders saying, hey, listen, don't meet with him in the cage, meet with him behind glass. And we were there when he was calling you, and we actually posted a video on TikTok of your conversation with him and how he felt like you're basically giving him the end run and giving him bullshit, and you had to assuage his fears and tell him, I'm coming in to see you, don't worry, I just have to get all this paperwork in order. And so why don't you bring the listeners up to date on from that point on until you actually eventually met with him.
Yeah, so that was 30 days ago, and it has still been a continuation of 30 days. He has been the most challenging inmate I've had to date. But yeah, it's been going back and forth. One day he's just manic and excited, and he could be screaming on the phone. The next he's docile. I mean, he's actually really chill, and he's, easygoing. It's just a wave with him of back and forth. And it's been like that for the last 30 days. With him especially, there's been more concern among, the prison officials as well as the inmates. There was a couple times I didn't answer my phone, and he calls back to back to back to back. And if I don't answer, some of the inmates and the COs have told me they've heard him actually screaming on the phone, I'll kill you, you bitch, I'll kill you, you bitch. And this has happened multiple times.
Wow.
So what happened when you actually got in front of him? Were you able to do it behind glass?
Well, let's back up for a little bit, because I want to get the whole trajectory here. So like I said, when we were there and you had that phone conversation, which we could probably, what we're going to do is we'll post that phone conversation into the podcast for the people that haven't seen it. But if you want to see it, you can go to our TikTok page, Partners in True Crime podcast, and you can see and hear the actual conversation. But he was escalating. as you were saying. And then now it makes sense when you got those reports from the other death row inmates that he was screaming your name and obscenities because he was frustrated. He wasn't getting what he wanted. And, you were telling him that you had to meet with him between glass, and he didn't want that. He wanted you alone in the cage together. And I could see for the first time, I mean, we've known you for how long now?
Yeah.
A couple of years.
Couple of years, that I can tell that you were scared. So tell us a little bit about that and what was going through your mind.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever been weary about getting into the cage with one, and I've been on the phone with Alan most of this time. There's 30 days that I've been here. I'm trying to get a handle on Ing to explain to people who have not been to San Quentin's death row. There's 2 visiting rooms, so there's an East Block visiting room and there's a North Seg visiting room. Now, East Block is where the normal prisoners are. North Seg is another part of death row, but it's where if you have quote unquote good behavior. So these are the good boys of death row, quote unquote. And so Charles Ing is over in the good boy section in North Seg. Now, in the visiting room in East Block, it's shaped like a U. So the cages are in a U. So they bring the offenders down, they go into the cage, and you go in. And there's 2 cops on the inside, and there's 1 patrolling the outside. It's a much more secure visiting room. The other one in North Seg, there is only 1 CO who's sitting way off to the side and doesn't really do the rounds to check inside the cages at all. And in North Seg, they're lined up just 2 rows. And 1 row is kind of in the middle, that's pretty safe. But the ones that have the windows and the ones all the way back where the windows are, the CO has no vision on unless he's going down this row, which is very rare. So these cages are kind of like in the back set. And the inmates know about these cages because they're called the quote unquote sex cages. This is where they go with like their wives or girlfriends for, sexual purposes, because they're not patrolled. So they're the most dangerous cages on death row. So Ing has been wanting to get me in these back cages. Now, how we came aware in the prison, he was actually plotting this. He has a woman who comes, it's a religious woman who comes to visit him, and he was telling the correctional officers he needs to be in the back by the window because the front cages have carbon monoxide. So he was actually grooming the correctional officers to put him in these cages towards the back. And then he started asking on the prison yard about where the cameras are. He wanted to know exactly where the security cameras are and what ones aren't positioned at what cage and that kind of stuff. And that's how he just got on the radar of the inmates on the yard. They were like, this is kind of weird. He's asking about cameras. And then when I started talking to them about the carbon monoxide, because he had told me too, I have to request the ones in the back because the carbon monoxide, which I knew was bullshit. But I had started mentioning it to them, and that's how the pieces started to come together. He's been trying to get me in these back cages. And then he started talking to the other offenders about, some of his plans of what he wanted to do.
What was his plan?
It was for a rape, and then it's escalated now to a kill, is what he's described to the other offenders. For him, he knows he's going to die once he gets placed in another prison because of his crimes, especially with the babies. For him, this is it. This is his last hurrah, you could say. It's his last chance, or as Alan says, this is his last thrill kill, his last way to go out.
Yeah. Wasn't he also, I remember you showed us you sent us, after we left and we got back and you were going back and forth with him, you sent us a picture. Can you describe what the picture that he drew and he sent to you?
What was the picture? I'm trying to remember.
It was like a fairy tale picture.
Yeah, it was something creepy.
Yeah, he has this, I guess it was like a fairy tale in the Asian culture of where this guy kills the woman he loves or something, and then he kills himself. I guess like a very warped murder, suicide, Romeo Juliet type thing.
Got it.
And he had sent, this book or this picture of this fairy tale that he loved growing up as a child, which was also another cue for concern when we were looking at everything put together.
Yeah, and I remember you were telling us that you were consulting Dr. Alan Pass during this whole thing.
Yes.
Can you kind of give us a diagram of what you guys were talking about and how he was coaching you through this?
Yeah, first he said, I really would not get in the cage because he has zero impulse control. You can look at his crimes and see that it's clear as day. I mean, he was shoplifting while he's committing the murders, and that's what kept getting him caught, which shows zero impulse control, his manic behavior, the bipolar mood swings. You're looking at his clinical diagnosis along with his, pattern of behavior in the present moment. And when you kind of put this all together, you have to make the risk assessment of whether or not it's safe to get into the cage at San Quentin. So that's what we've been doing, is kind of like looking at his behavior in the present moment along with his clinical diagnosis and, information from the offenders that we're getting to do the risk assessment.
Crazy.
People are always wondering, and I
Yeah.
really want to make this clear, why you're putting your life in danger to go into these cages. For him specifically, there's a purpose. So kind of draw a picture for everyone to understand why you're doing this. Why would you put yourself in a cage with someone like this?
Everyone keeps telling me just walk away. This is way too dangerous. Walk away. I have a 5-year-old son. If something happens to me, he's an orphan. There's no father in the picture. Just walk away. And, it's easier said than done when you have so many missing bodies. You have 2 mothers and 2 babies that have never been recovered. You have Paul and his sister Sharon. She's a big victims' rights advocate now. She's been looking for her brother, since the early 80s, just dying to get him home, to bury him, have a funeral, all these families. And then you have the 21 girls that we don't even know their names. So it's not something easy to just walk away from when I've come this far with Ing and I can do the extraction. But yeah, it's a very dangerous situation. But it's how do I sleep at night if I walk away knowing I came this far with him and, I could bring some solace to these families. I'm tormented at night about it, thinking about it.
Yeah, I can't imagine what kind of dreams you have.
Exactly. Not only that, but like your son, worrying about your son and trying to living your life as you're trying to do this work and knowing that your son needs you and that you have to balance your home life with your work, and knowing if you do walk away, you're letting down all these people. That's a lot of pressure on somebody.
It's a lot of pressure. It is. Like I said, I'm tormented at night because, I do have a son to think about and I'm his only parent. And then I'm thinking of the families and all these missing victims. So it's a very just stressful thing. And every night, when I lay down to sleep, I think about these victims and what I've done and what extractions I've gotten so far and what more I could be doing. And, we're at the 11th hour now at San Quentin. These guys, 3 buses have gone out now. So it really is, we're really at the wire.
How many extractions have you managed to get in this past couple of weeks?
A few. None from Ing as of yet. I've made a lot of headway on Ing though, I would say. It was just what we have seen each other. I think it is. How many times have we seen each other now? Twice.
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Now, before there was the build-up, when we were there and there was all the threats against you and stuff like that and the pending, potential violence against you. And then talk about when you finally connected with him as far as got in there. What was the mood like? Was he angry at you or was he excited? Or and tell us how that conversation went and what you guys talked about.
Well, it was kind of a perfect, this was about 2 Saturdays ago. I had went over on to Norseg to interview James Marlowe, who we've had on the podcast, and Wayne Adam Ford, and Michael Gargiulo was also down there. So I had 3 serial killer down on Norseg that day, and I had found out last minute that Ing would be coming down to visit with that religious woman that he visits, so I knew I was going to see him. And it was kind of actually perfect that I had so many serial offenders down that day, because they all got to actually watch his movements and actually come to me and tell me what they've noticed about his movements and what they're thinking. And I was sitting in the cage with James Marlowe at the time. Ing came down and he was kind of like diagonal from the cage we were in. And ironically, I was in the most dangerous cage that he wants to get me in with Marlowe. Just so ironic. But he was diagonal across and he tilted his head and had seen me. And I was actually trying to bow down in my seat a little bit. And Marlowe was trying to turn his body to kind of shield me away so he wouldn't see me, but he saw me. And he came over and it was the weirdest thing too, because he walked sideways, almost like Marlowe said, it was like a shuffle, like a dance shuffle. And it was very creepy. But he walked sideways all the way to the cage and just stood there just staring at me, and got up and I went over and I was talking to him through the cage. These cages also, I should add, on Norsec are actually soundproof. There's this plexiglass stuff surrounding all these cages because these are where the attorneys come to visit, so they have to be soundproof. I had to get up and go over and kind of shout through to him, and he had said to me, we're going to talk later. We're going to talk later. And he was very upset. And he, did like his sideways walk or jig back to his cage and got in there. And I sat back down, and Marlo was kind of like wide-eyed. And he was like, this is not a good situation. He was like, I really don't think you should get in a cage with them. And this is another serial killer saying it. And he was like, just by that movement alone, he got a bad feeling from it. So I had then gotten out to the cage, and I was speaking to Gargiulo, which is right across from Ing. And Ing got up from the cage and started to talk to me. And he said, why aren't you visiting with me? Why aren't you coming in with me? And I blamed it on the prison. I've been blaming on, there's scheduling problems with the prison.
Well, that was partly true. That was partly true.
That was true. It is true. We've been actually waiting for Rob to actually get approved so he can come into the prison with me. So I've been, a lot of stall tactics, a stall time. And so I was kind of blaming on the prison. But he started shouting out of the cage at me. And it was loud enough that when I looked around, like all the offenders who were in the cages, with their whoever they were visiting with, actually stopped and turned and looked at us. It was like he was creating a big scene right there on North Seg, just getting, all worked up. And even in front of his poor visitor sitting right there.
What was he shouting at you?
Oh, just why haven't you visited me? The prison, this is the prison. This isn't the prison. This is you. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And just like going off, just popping off. And I was like, try to be very calm. I was just like, Charlie, this isn't the place we should be discussing this. Why don't we talk later tonight? Why don't you call me tonight? We'll talk about this later. Just trying to get him to calm down. And then he calmed down, but then he started screaming again. Well, you're with two other guys, and you're meeting with Ford, and you're meeting with Marlo, because at this time Ford had come down for my next interview. He gets very upset seeing me with other serial killers interviewing. This is actually, it sounds very weird for a criminologist to be there interviewing multiple serial killers and one's getting mad, but they do. They like compete with each other for the most visits or the most time spent. Yep. They turn it into like, it's just a prison, I think, and also a guy thing of who's getting the most time, who's getting the most visits, the most attention, who's getting it.
Yeah.
And let's explain that a little bit, because as a woman, you get criticized for this because you're attractive and people think you're using your, attractiveness or your sexuality in order to get them to talk. And explain your tactics for people to understand what exactly it is that you're doing. Because what you're doing is incredible work to be able to get information from these killers, to bring these victims home. And it has nothing to do with
physicality or, the sex. It really has nothing to do with any of those things. When you're sitting down there and you're interviewing and you're working on extractions, it comes all down to your, how intelligent you are, your street savvy. You have to use every part of your brain is just on rapid fire, because, you're not only, you're watching their body movements, you're also thinking of your next question, but you're also paying attention to the verbiage they're using. Every little clue, every little cue has to be picked up. So you are it's nonstop, that 5 hours in the cage with them. Your mind is just going, and you have to be just on it, and you have to know when to push, when to pull, when to pounce, when to pull back. It's a dance that's like on every faculty of your brain is going at rapid fire all at once, and it has nothing to do with what you look like or what sex you are. It's just whether or not you can do this work and, pretty much multitask at all these different elements that are coming together that you have to notice too.
Yeah, and you're trying to retain all this stuff too. You're trying to record it in your brain. Because it's like you don't really have time to write this stuff down. And you can't record it. There's no recording devices. So you have to be super attentive. And you're almost like in between all the small talk to keep him off guard. And when he does bleed out a piece of significant information, it's a really challenging thing. And you just said it, 5 hours.
Yeah.
Okay? In like a tiny...
And that's just with one.
That's just with one.
5 hours one, yeah.
In a cage, it's probably like 6x3.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I was in the cage with you with David Carpenter, so I know what it's like. I wasn't in that other place. It sounds like you were in a different place than we were when we were there.
Yeah.
So that alone was just claustrophobic and creepy, and and the correctional officers, I mean, they're there, they're babysitters, but like we said before, if something happens in that cage, they're not going to open up the cage right away. They're
Right.
their procedure is to keep it locked in. Gas the guy with some, gas,
Right.
and which will get all over you to try to get, and then they have to wait for the CERT team to come in, pad up, and that usually probably takes about 15-20 minutes.
At least 15, 20 minutes. And it's not even gas. They're just macing. They're just
Macing, yeah.
going, and it's one CO would come over in North Seg to mace. So it would just be one guy coming in there trying to mace. And then you're waiting, for them to get padded up and come down.
Yeah.
They cannot open that cage door because they cannot endanger the rest of the prison population.
Yeah.
So, when you go in there, you're signing your life away. If anything happens, you've already signed that piece of paper. Doesn't matter. They're not going to, bargain for you. You've signed that right away when you walked inside of that door. So you have to wait for them to come down. And like I said, it's one guy just putting in some mace. So, that's a big thing too, is when you're in that cell with them, you have to watch their body movements and, are they about to pounce? There's going to be cues for that. You have to be watching everything when you're in there.
And I think you said before that Charles Ng is a martial artist.
Yes.
So he doesn't need any weapons.
He doesn't. He's a martial artist. He's also a survivalist. He's been in the Marine Corps, and he's a big guy.
What is the psychopathy of Charles Ng?
Charles Ng, he is one, you could dissect for, years. He really, if you look at the relationship with his father, he had a very, very strict upbringing with his parents. He told me his most traumatic experience was that 13, his dad took his dolly away, and he loved this dolly, and ironically, blonde-haired, blue-eyed dolly. And, he described this dolly as having a personality to him. So when I'm looking at, him and his childhood trauma, and then looking at his adulthood, where he joined the Marine Corps, and that's when, all of his impulsive stealing started, and that's where he actually met Lake. So Lake actually played as the father figure to him, an older brother. And the last interview I did have with Lake, with Ng, he was talking about how Lake was that surrogate father, that surrogate big brother to him.
Who is this person now? Can you just kind of give us a little bio on this person? Because it sounds like you're going to go into it.
Leonard Lake was Charles Ng's crime partner. So he was 38. He was about 15 years older than Ng when they met. So they met in the Marine Corps and a survivalist magazine. And Ng actually went to live with Lake and his wife at the time. That's when they started building a bunker, and they had a cabin out in the mountains. These are the Sierra Nevada mountains. And they put their plan, kind of like Whitaker and Norris, of having sex slaves. So they brought these girls, they had girls, but not just girls, they also brought, Paul men too, families. They abducted 2 families, a husband and a wife, and their, I think it was 19-year-old baby boys with both families that they took. So they have this cabin out in the mountains, this bunker, true sexual sadists, both of them. So Ng kind of looked up to Lake as that, older brother, that father figure that he wanted. And they had this very sick relationship where it was kind of that dynamic, but they're taking victims. And they videotaped a lot of their criminal acts with the women and the things that they did, including the rape and the killings.
That's crazy.
Awful.
Yeah.
And so how many victims are still out there now? Apparently, you've been working with police department cold case unit. And
Yeah, so there was, when I just went in for the cold case unit, they had told me, it was a attempted rape and a murder that Ng had committed by himself. This was in San Francisco, that he was never even charged for. So you got to think, a lot of these guys have other murders that they weren't even charged for. But with Ng and Lake, what we just did a tally, Rob and I, there are the 21 photographs of the missing girls that we know of. So that's 21 girls that they just found the photographs of. There could be a lot more. And then the mother and the babies have never been recovered. Paul is one of the victims that's never been recovered. They actually sold this cabin owned by Lake's wife. And in 1993, they actually found another one of the victims buried on the property. So they've still found bodies on this property even so long after. I mean, it was like 10 to 15 years later, they found another body on the property. So when we did the tally, we're looking at 29 for the extraction, and this is just body locations.
Now, does those missing body locations, have they been able to identify them?
We know they're at the cabin. We know they're by the cabin. That's where they put most of the victims. And we know it's within a 5-mile radius, but that's as far as we've gotten so far.
But my question is that the ones that they recovered, you said like in 1993, have they identified those people?
Yes.
And do they match up with some of the photographs?
None of the photographs, no. A lot of the ones recovered were males that they did find buried. A lot were in sleeping bags as well. But there was also, they burned a lot of the victims too. So they've also found a lot of bone fragments from burned victims from when they incinerated them too, that have never been, I don't think a lot of those have been identified as well.
Is this what's driving you to go into the cage with him?
Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at a high number, such as, 29 just that we know of. I mean, that's just that we know of. There's probably so many more that we're unaware of. So you got to think that's 29 plus the other ones we don't even know about yet. That's such a high number of victims.
What has he told you? Has he told anything about his victims? Did you talk to him about his victims?
He's talked about them, not in great detail with me. Like, he's acknowledged them. He just recently started to talk about the babies and just said, like, they didn't need the babies anymore because they were after the mothers for the rapes, and they killed the fathers pretty quickly.
Okay, so
And Rob Dick, because that's who you're speaking of when you speak of Rob, has he gone in the cage with you, or have you just been going by yourself?
He is actually coming down tomorrow, so this will be this weekend. Him and I will be going in the cage with Ing Saturday and Sunday. And
besides your interaction with him, where he was walking sideways down the hallway, have you been in the cage with him?
Yes, last weekend I did get in the cage with him. It was a very risky move. Alan was not too happy about me making this decision, nor were the offenders of me getting in the cage. They were like, this is way too risky. The only reason I did it is because how short amount of time we have left with these guys getting, the buses now rolling out. Before I went in, I knew the way I could keep him is just keep his mood stabilized, which is a job in and of itself, just to keep his mood stabilized, which I was able to do. So
yeah, you do it quite well. I mean, when we were listening to you on the phone with him when we were outside San Quentin, it was just like,
this is where just the skill set comes in, where you have to, if you don't know what you're doing, literally your life is in danger. So I knew as long as I just kept his mood, stable, I'd be able to get through it. It did get a little dicey towards the end because they actually cleared out all of the other visiting cages on death row, and then they cleared out all of the mainline visiting. So it was literally just him and I in the cage over there.
And when you were in the cage with him, how long were you in there, and what was he doing? Was he cooperating, or was he manic?
He was. His mood shifts minute to minute, but he was in pretty good spirits, I would say, for him at least. And then I got him to start talking about and touching on the crimes, at least for a while, I was really surprised at. So I was able to keep him, stabilized mood-wise, but also, start to touch on the murders and the crimes with him.
And what kind of information did he reveal to you, if you can share with us?
We talked a lot about his relationship with Lake, the babies, the mothers. We talked a little bit about Lake's wife, because she had actually, when they were arrested, went and took some of Lake's diaries, or he had all these diaries and manuscripts that detailed about these crimes, and she had taken some of them. And I was asking him, what had she taken, what was inside those documents, what he knows about that. So we went into that a little bit. We went into what I saw on the videotapes. I brought that up. If you go online, you can actually see portions of the videotapes, and there's one of Lake talking to a woman. She's one of the mothers, and Ing is actually cutting the blouse off of her, and she's asking about her baby and where her baby is. And Charlie actually says in the video, your baby's dead, and she gets very upset, and then Lake covers it by saying, no, your baby's fine, just do what we say, type of thing. It's a very horrific video.
How did that make it on the internet?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that shouldn't be on the internet.
No.
Yeah, it's a horrific
And
video.
no one should watch that. That's just awful.
No.
All right, so the poor
yeah.
woman was murdered and her baby was murdered. And there's 29 other victims that have not been recovered. Imagine having a family member that was killed by these people.
Yeah.
And you never get them home.
And her sister is the one in the video is still looking for her, and her nephew.
Have you contacted any of the victims' families?
I have not yet. I've just been waiting to see if I can get more from the extraction before I contact them. But yeah.
Does he know why you're in there talking to him?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's clear.
Aware.
He's not just sitting there trying to get, FaceTime with a young, pretty woman and just to kind of, distract him from his life sentence.
No, he's well aware of what I'm after. Yeah.
Why do you think he'll tell you anything?
It's like Alan and I always talk about, you have to go to the criminal and look at their underlying need. So when I'm looking at Ing, one of his biggest underlying needs is actually, to have a bond with somebody. He's been known to follow people around on the yard. Like he'll pick another offender and he'll follow them around like a puppy dog, right? So it's like he's looking for that bond or that person. So that's one of the things I'm actually trying to target is we can have that bond. And I always use Bittaker as an example for him, like of how close we were. Like just because you give up the extraction, I'm still going to come visit you. I'm still going to talk to you. You're still going to have a person in your life type of thing. I'm targeting that need of, being abandoned and alone. That's what I'm targeting to get him to give up this information.
Yeah. And you did get something from him because you posted us a picture of some of his belongings. Tell us the story behind that and how you got able to, and why is that significant?
Well, I mean, it's a huge thing for them to actually send you their property. I mean, that's massive. They don't send this stuff out to anybody. They typically only send it over to their attorneys for safekeeping. So it takes an enormous amount of trust for them to send you a box to actually hold on to other personal belongings.
Can you share what he was in those belongings?
I haven't gone through it totally yet, like really dissected it. I've only skimmed through a couple things. I was going to do a video maybe with Rob of us actually going through it and, an unveiling of it. One thing I did find, though, was in his sketchbook. It was a sketch of somebody strangling somebody in a sketchbook. Mm. And this is a recent sketchbook.
Do you think there's some other Easter eggs in there that may help you?
I'm going to go through now with all of his art books too, especially finding that. That's a huge clue. If he's still, in these art book or sketchbooks, violent acts such as strangling somebody or killing somebody, I mean, that's going to give us a huge insight into him.
How so?
Well, he still has the homicidal urges, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever going away.
Yeah. This shows he's still in active fantasy mode as well.
Do you think that's an olive branch from him to say, all right, I'm not mad at you anymore? And that, you think that was kind of like a gesture of goodwill from him?
I think so. I think, it's been a back and forth, but he's slowly starting to warm up to me. And this is the, track I want to keep with him on with him, build the trust and rapport more and more. I mean, that's what's really going to get the extractions.
Yeah.
Once that trust is built up. Yeah.
What do the other death row serial killers think about him? It sounds like they're very wary of him, and they're obviously giving you a lot of heads up and warnings because they see this guy every day. But generally, how is he seen by the row? He keeps to himself. A lot of the gangs on San Quentin's death row have gone after him because of his crimes with the baby. So he's even targeted on death row. So he keeps to himself mainly. And like I said, he sometimes will find an offender that he likes or trusts, and he'll follow him around like a puppy dog. Yeah. Well, I guess that behavior is pretty on mark because he had that mentor, that guy Late, whatever it is, and he sought him out. So that kind of, he feels comfortable in that kind of an environment, having just one person to kind of follow around.
Yes. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen individuals so clingy onto other humans.
Well, that conversation you had with him on the phone that we recorded, which we're going to put on here, he sounded like a clingy, needy boyfriend.
Very.
Like, it was like almost like he sounded like he was in college and you were his college sweetheart, and you're like, well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And you're bullshitting me. And I don't want, you're going to have to communicate with me this. You're not communicating with me right. Mm-hmm. It was bizarre.
It was. And I found out afterwards because when he was calling my phone back to back, I'm talking like 50 times within 10 minutes. And I had to talk to him about it. He cannot call my phone in that manner. He had said that he had done this to his attorney the same exact way, and his attorney had to talk to him, and his attorney, he would get on the phone with his attorney the same way, saying, why don't you do this? I need this. Can't you do this? Like, it's that demanding nature and that cleanliness. Apparently he's done this with his attorneys as well.
It was almost childlike too. You sound like a spoiled teenager.
Yeah. Serial offenders, I mean, their emotional intelligence is drastically lower.
That's what I was going to ask you, in his IQ and his emotional intelligence, what level is he at?
Oh, he's for emotional intelligence. Oh, definitely. I would put late teenage 4 years.
So you think that one situation where his father took away his doll triggered all of this?
I don't think that was the whole thing,
In his mind, it was.
Yeah, maybe that could definitely
They
play a
always
huge
say, they
factor.
said the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, whether it's like you were almost hit by a car and survived the car wreck, or if your dad tried to take away your doll.
Yeah,
In that moment, that's the worst thing that happened to him.
yeah.
What's his IQ level at?
I actually don't know his IQ. I know it is up there though. I know it's in the superior range. It's not low.
Yeah, I mean the level of manipulation that you have to have, and the internal
Yeah.
dialogue you have to have with yourself to perform these horrific acts and think you can get and they got away with a lot of it.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's got to be emboldened for a serial killer. If if you're looking at 29 potential victims and photographs and based upon his behavior and what he's done in the past, there's more. There's more.
oh yeah. And I
And
mean, they were killing people they knew. This is rare for serial killers to even do, but Lake had killed the best man at his wedding. Charlie had killed a lot of the Marines that he was in with too.
reprisals from past.
Yeah, so they were not. It almost seems sloppy, but for them it was more emboldening, like you said. I mean, they were that cocky, that brazen, even killing people they knew. And Lake Lake also killed his own brother.
Wow. And then did either one of them serve any tours in combat?
They both did.
Where?
I know Ing was over in Asia.
But I'm just saying combat as far as
Combat. I don't know if I should say I don't know if about the combat. I know that Ing was over in Asia a lot, but I don't know if he was in active combat.
Yeah, it all depends on when he was a Marine.
Yeah.
If he was a Marine before 1990,
Yeah.
probably not. If he was a Marine after 1991, possibly. No,
Yeah. Well, this would have been, let's see, the early 80s was when their crimes were taking place, so this would have been late 70s.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they didn't serve any combat.
Yeah.
They were stationed somewhere, unless they were. He didn't have any. He didn't have a specialized MOS. Like he was just a regular Marine, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. He was just a regular one.
Okay.
And I believe Lake was discharged for schizoid personality disorder.
And where's he?
Lake actually killed himself with a cyanide pill when they pulled him in.
Got it.
So that's another factor too, is we only have Ing, to find out this information that we need, because Lake is gone.
Is his wife still alive?
She is.
Have you
She
spoken
is.
to her?
Rob was here a couple weeks ago and we spent the whole day trying to track her down. That is in the works. We are trying to contact her.
Okay.
And we believe she is still in the area. So we might even just do a drop by.
Interesting. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. She lawyered up pretty quick and didn't have to testify, at the trial. No, she did get on the stand, but they got her off pretty quickly. She had some deal worked out with the attorneys, but she did go and retrieve stuff from the cabin that was Lake had said in the video. My manuscripts, my diaries, some of that stuff was never recovered. So it's always believed that she went and got it. And it's always believed that she knows more than she's ever said.
That was going to be my next question. Do you think that she knew what was going on?
I think she had an idea. I do.
Yeah.
From what I've seen and what I've read, I do.
Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, we had, we did the Green River Killer documentary, and we knew, and we personally knew the family. I mean, for 25 years, he was killing people, and they had no clue. And they were close to him. They spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
So they're manipulators. They know how to cover their tracks.
Yeah.
How much more time do you have up there?
Well, I have this weekend, next weekend, and it's these could be the last 2 weeks. It's really looking like these could be the last two.
Well, it's also contingent. I mean, tomorrow you can go in there and they say, "Oh, we took them out. They're gone."
Yeah. I have no idea. It could happen at any moment at this point.
Yeah.
And how long have you been going to San Quentin to do this, Laura? For people that don't know.
Overall?
Yeah.
10 years. A decade now. Yeah. 10 years. A whole decade of my life. San Quentin's death row. And I've been out here since the end of January during these transfers and these final extractions.
So the goal is now with Ing is to try to get some more information from him.
Yeah.
And specifically about other murders he committed. Now, out of that cold case batch of cases that you got from San Francisco PD homicide, I mean, is there anything in there that he could possibly be connected to?
Yeah, they gave me a couple cases. I can't disclose that information right now, but there's quite a few that they still think he's connected to, that they'd like me to find out more about.
Wow, that's crazy. It's crazy that he's done that. If you could make an estimate based upon his track record and stuff, how many bodies will you think or people, victims there are?
Gosh, from what they're telling me with the ones he's never charged with, the ones they want me to look into, and then you're looking at the 29 just known. God, it's almost a scary figure. It really is.
We talking like maybe 100, maybe over 100?
I mean, it's possible. I'm gonna say from what I'm seeing with the cold case units, it's definitely we're looking at 50-ish more.
Wow.
But those are just that's caught on their radar.
Yeah.
There could be a lot more even aside from them.
And how many was he charged with?
He was, I don't know the exact number he was charged with or convicted of, but they had showed me some that he was never tried for, never convicted of in the cold case unit. It was a high number, though, he was convicted of.
Well, in the Parthenon of serial killers, where does he fit in? They always have it always seems like they put him on these tiers, and like the Ted Bundys and the Dennis Rader, BTK, and Gary Ridgway, and
right.
I mean, where does he fit in with that horrible, horrible group of people?
He really is like a beast I've never encountered before. He's a new one for me. He really is like a new beast. I'm trying to figure my way out with where would I put him. It's almost so hard to even place him because he's so different from a Ted Bundy. He's so different from a BTK. He's so different from a Bittaker, but he's just as vile and just as homicidal and just vicious and sadistic. It's hard to place him.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like, like Ted Bundy. They say that one of his tactics is he was a good looking guy and he was charismatic, and that was his web.
Yeah.
That was his web he used to catch his victims in. And Dennis Rader would, because he looked like he looked like someone's neighbor,
right?
And he was very kind of straight laced. That was his. Gary Ridgway was, he was an average looking guy, non-threatening. Right. So that was his. He sounds like a wild animal, Charles.
He really is. That's the best way you could possibly describe him. He's definitely not, the one who's going to law school driving, the Volkswagen Beetle, or, the neighbor like BTK is. He's not a Ridgway. He really is just kind of like this impulsive wild animal type of serial killer. Just killing, and there was everything. I mean, men, women, children. There was nothing is off limits to Ing.
Yeah. How was your energy level during that first meeting with him after he kind of blew up at you, and what was going through your mind? Because normally, you go in there and you have an agenda, and most of these guys, you're not, even though in the back of your brain, you have to keep yourself on edge and protected, but you usually have a good sense of them not going to do anything, and then you can kind of let your guard down a little bit and have a conversation with these people.
Right.
With him.
Right. I'm at least able to do that with most of them.
Yes. With him, that first meeting, kind of take us through what was going through your mind and how you were, what you were thinking.
This is the first time you get inside of a cage with a serial killer, and you really think, am I going to make it out of here alive? Am I going to walk out of this cage alive? Am I going to walk out of this prison alive? It was really that was in my mind, is this the last time? Is this it? Is it going to happen? Which is terrifying when you're in that cage thinking that.
And do the correctional officers know all this backstory that's going on behind the bars and knowing?
I'm almost positive, because I did have a talk with one of the lieutenants. He walked me back from East Block, and I just said to him, how is Ing as a prisoner? And he said he's been a model prisoner, but you got to remember, psychopaths actually function very well under structure. So that really doesn't mean anything when they say, he's a model prisoner, but they listen in on every phone call. They see all the tablets, all the texts. And I mean, this has been the biggest prison, drama for months now with Ing, and getting in a cage with him with multiple serial offenders. All they're doing is talking about it. You're talking about a sterile environment with no stimuli, and this is big game, inside the prison. It's big drama. So I'm very certain that the prison officials are aware of what's been going on by listening to the conversations and the prison buzz and the texts and the phone calls. And
they heard that conversation you had with him on the phone that day.
They did hear that conversation. We know. Yep, right on the phone. So they were upset about the COVID.
Yeah. The fake COVID. So, how many murders was Charles Ing convicted of?
He was convicted of 11.
And you think there's how many still out there, victims that are still unaccounted for?
Well, there's the 29 that we know of for the extractions. And the ones the cold case unit has told me about, which we're looking possibly up in the 40s, 50s. And I mean, those are just the ones that caught on the radar of the cold case unit. So there's really no telling how many the real number actually could be.
Yeah. Well, be careful up there, and then keep us up to date. Obviously, we talk to you a lot, but let us know how things are going. And then you have plans to see him tomorrow. You said when Rob
It's
comes up there.
Wednesday. No, sorry, not Wednesday. Saturday and Sunday is going to be Ing, and Rob is coming up for this round.
Well, that's good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So
All
we'll
right.
check in with you over the weekend then.
Yeah, and we can have maybe
Yeah.
you and Rob on the podcast to kind of give us a download on that. And
Yeah,
then
definitely. And we're going to go through Ing stuff, and we'll
Yeah.
do it on film for you guys too.
that would be great. And then, so for our listeners, we're going to wrap up the podcast here, but hang on because we're going to play that call that Laura had with Charles Ing when he was flipping out on her. So it's definitely a must listen to if you really want to get the idea what kind of personality he is. All right, Laura, be careful up there. We'll be talking to you, and thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey,
I'm.
what's going on? I know you. Go ahead, you talk first.
Oh, did you get my message? I didn't want to tell them up at the gate. I tested positive for COVID, and I didn't want to infect you. But I didn't want the COs to know, because they kept saying why.
I didn't know why. I wrote an angry email message to you because I saw you. I was in the first booth in the visiting room where there's a big window looking out to the walkway to the visiting up to the East Block. I saw you coming down. I know you visited somebody because the officer told me, and so I was so angry. And then when she called, when I asked her whether you check in, because at first she told me that you're gonna see me after you saw the other inmate in East Block, and then when I got the word back from him, he said that she only want to see you behind glasses. I said, why? He said, there's no reason.
Yeah, I put
I told you saw in East Block tell you this guy is dangerous, or you know, and you just basically want to only see me behind glasses.
Who said that?
I just come. Hello? I said I was so angry. I saw you walk by the walkway coming on down from East Block visiting. I knew you saw somebody before you saw me because the sergeant put me out today this morning and say, hey, you got a visit at 11 something, but with Bran, and but Bran is supposed to going to visit another inmate. And you still want to visit? I say, of course I do. So I was already angry because you never told me you're going to come to see somebody before you see me today. And of course, all the email, all the message I sent you, you never respond except for one first reply. Oh, Charlie, I'm in San Francisco. And then you don't even answer all the, acknowledge the things that I asked you. And then back to the visiting room today. They escorted me about 11:45 down to the main visiting room. That's where I was put in the first booth. And then that's why I was seeing the open window. I saw you walk down when they terminated visit in East Block. And then I was keep waiting, and I asked the front desk officer, can you call the front and ask whether she already left the institution or she's planning to visit me, because that's what the sergeant told me. And
I
then
had
she
to
came
go.
back and told me
I had to
that,
go. Mark had to talk to me about something really important, so I had to jump over to East Block really quick. I had to put him behind glass too.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know. I have a really low opinion of Mark because he lied many times. And I talked to Marlo, which used to be next to him in the EOP cage.
Mm-hmm.
He also got tired of him. He doesn't even go to the next cage next to him.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Yeah.
I don't even know if those information
Well-
I give Bo ever get to
Well,
Bo.
Charlie, I have a 5-hour visit scheduled for next weekend.
Okay. All right then.
Yeah.
I'll give you another chance because I'm fed up with this kind of communication. Every time I express love to you, you never reciprocate on the tablet, you know.
No,
and,
I've been traveling. I've been
don't
very
know whether-
busy. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. You got to understand where I'm coming from, because I got set up by jailhouse snitches and all these people.
No, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
I trust. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
don't worry.
I
It's
just
been
know that
hectic traveling, but I have 5 hours scheduled
Okay,
next week.
all right.
So don't worry.
I don't really care. You just wear a face mask. I don't care if you have COVID. You know, I don't believe until you come to see me again and try to work together without any kind of bullshit this time, you know, because I give you everything in preparation, so you don't have to even have to think what to bring, what to buy me to eat, and you know, and all of a sudden I got my hook dash again. I mean, you could have told me early on the tablet, nobody would have cared. You know, you could have told me that.
I know. I was just rushing this morning. I woke up late, so I didn't have time to get on the tablet. But I do have everything scheduled like for 5 hours.
Yeah. Because all these officers were weak the other way, just like I do too. Oh, this bitch is fucking two guys, and this ain't got pissed off, that kind of thing, right? So I have to control my emotion on the one hand and feel like a sucker, you know. So I don't need this no more. I mean, you gotta be frank with me, because you know I was all fired up because when you told me you didn't directly text me to ask me, but you said using the Scrabble pieces to say to you, well, will you marry me, that stuff. I thought it was just being romantic. And I know.
Charlie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, like about the glass. I can't, you know, I had COVID. I saw Mark behind glass this morning as well. I have 5 hours scheduled next weekend and the weekend after. I'm going to be here, for February. So don't worry, we have a ton of time still. And I've just been so crazy, I haven't been able to respond to my emails. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Because I think your name is somehow, I don't know how many people you have on the visiting list in San Quentin, because Dr. Bertrand, when she visited me, we have, she goes me and me and her go that way back. And of course, I told you before, when the last time when I sent you money, she knew right away. And then she told me that, do you know how many people she's on her, she is on the visiting list here? I don't know that question. I know you might have
I don't know why anybody would be talking about how many people I visit. Nobody knows that except for me. I keep that private.
You don't have to tell me, because she is professional. She didn't tell me either. She just want to warn me because she knows how fragile my mental health is, and she knows how naive I am in terms of relationships. So I don't know. I know you visit Seneca, obviously, and I don't know who else you visit. Other than I know Mark's name obviously is on your list, because he talked about you telling her you want to listen. I mean,
yeah.
I don't. What I mean is, it's a security concern San Quentin have when you have a visiting multiple inmates, that kind of thing. This is a success situation that you create, because I would think that you are just, who's the real friends of yours, who's your real boyfriend, what is the motive? Are you visiting me, and then you send me that clip on this.
Well, you know what, Charlie, listen, I don't want you all worked up. It's going to be okay. I have the next 2 weeks, 5 hours scheduled. Okay? So, we still have plenty of time. I wish I got to see you today, but I really didn't want to put you at risk.
Yeah, but the fact is you don't tell me ahead of time, and now you keep this story.
Charlie, I've been flying and just traveling. I'm sorry. I gotta go because I have to drive. I'm about to get on the highway, but do you want to call me tonight at why don't you call me tonight at 8 and we can talk more?
Oh, all right. I'll call you at 8.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye.
Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and check out extra content from all of our podcasts. All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content.